Hello, everybody. This is the arshansamimian show. Welcome, and today we're going to be talking about how you can improve your fighting capabilities, but also how you can improve your body and your aesthetic look when you go out in public. So, if you're watching this, chances are you're probably a typical person who has a full daytime job, you have other priorities, and your whole life does not revolve around fighting or improving your body or bodybuilding. And you see a lot of content. You're a person like me where you see so much content of people doing bodybuilding, hypertrophy stuff, but you also see people who are very slim and they're also very good fighters. They dedicate all their lives to fighting, and you envy both sides. And you want to find a degree where you can actually mix and mesh both of them. You don't just want to be a fighter who's too slim or out of shape, but you also don't want to be a stiff bodybuilder who's just lifting weights all day and looks shredded, but isn't actually able to use that muscle. And this is where the healthy hybrid balance comes into play. The first thing we're going to talk about is how you can actually implement the martial arts, and we're going to start with that before going into the lifting. So, martial arts is what you need to improve in combat sports, but the problem is we don't always know what's the best martial art to start with. Now, I'm going to provide you with some personal preferences of mine that can be very objective for the vast majority of people, although other people might have slightly differing opinions, but we're going to start with mine. So here are the three main fighting styles that I recommend for you as just a typical person who wants to lift but improve your fighting capabilities. Number one, Muay Thai. If you have not heard of Thai boxing, Muay Thai, any of that sort, it is called the art of 8 limbs, where you're able to use your hands, you're able to elbow people, you can kick, you can knee, you can clinch, you can grab people and sweep them. So it's basically full stand-up striking, but really anything goes besides, general things like eye pokes, which are obviously prohibited in the sport. What I find is really good about Muay Thai is that it gives you that sort of an MMA but also a boxing blend, where in a typical street fight, if you were to want to defend yourself, chances are you don't want to go to the ground. Because if you go to the ground and you're fighting one person, chances are that person has a buddy, and if he has other people with him, when it goes to the ground, you're typically screwed and you're cooked. So that's really the last thing you want if you're in a self-defense situation, which is why you always want to stay on your feet. But the problem with staying on your feet is that if you only know one type of striking style, like boxing, where you have a very limited reach of different versatile strikes, that also puts you at a major disadvantage, because the thing about street fighting or self-defense is that the last thing you want to do is to know very little about how to actually mix different styles together. And what Muay Thai gives you is that balance between MMA and boxing. You don't have to worry about going to the ground, and you don't have to consider that, but you can also consider standing and fighting, but learning how to use different versatile strikes. You aren't only able to throw a punch and bob and weave your head. You actually know what happens if somebody grabs you. You can elbow them, you can grab them, you can trip them, you can chop their legs with some hard low kicks, off balance them. Let's say they were to throw a kick at you, which is unusual, but a possibility. You learn how to grab them, how to off balance them, throw them to the ground, which can severely damage your opponent, obviously in a self-defense situation where it is your last option. And this is why I think we would have to put Muay Thai at number one. It is the best art in terms of being able to stay on your feet, but able to use different actual fighting styles. And now we're going to go to number two. And honestly, I couldn't find which one is better than the other, so I actually tied them. MMA and boxing at a tie for second place. Now, the reason why I did this is because there's advantages and disadvantages to both. So boxing, as we already talked about, it is very limited in the sense that you aren't able to learn other types of strikes. You only know how to punch and move your head and have good footwork, which is still great on its own compared to a typical average citizen. But again, as we talked about, street fights and self-defense is very unpredictable. And what puts MMA in an advantage here is that you learn how to blend so many different things. It's not only like Muay Thai, where you learn so many different strikes, but you also learn ground game, which is something that Muay Thai does not have. Now, in MMA, it is the problem with it, and what puts it at a disadvantage and why I had to tie it with boxing is because it is very limited, not in the sense that you are able to learn so many versatile strikes, but because it's not a single martial art. And when you are a typical person who has a typical 9 to 5 and you don't have that time to allocate a lot of time to MMA, it puts you at a disadvantage where you have such a limited time to actually practice an individual art, which is why I tied this with boxing. So, therefore, overall, for the martial arts aspect, if you are looking to improve to the maximal degree, I recommend Muay Thai with a small side of some sort of boxing or jiu-jitsu you might want to do on the side if you have time. But prioritize Muay Thai, the art of 8 limbs. Learn how to clinch people, elbow people, get as much pad work in, sparring, bag work as you can, and prioritize that over other things like more shadow boxing, jump rope, which don't really get you as much of a bang for your buck compared to when you're actually in action and sparring other people, learning how to combat and move around. And now we're going to move on to how you can actually improve your lifting. Aesthetic wise, the best thing you can do here, especially since you're already doing martial arts, is to avoid doing all the extra fluff. What do I mean by that? Now, as we talked about cutting the extra fluff in combat sports by prioritizing on the 20%, like the actual sparring and the pad work and all that live action drilling, for lifting, this correlates in a sense. You don't want to spend all your time focusing on isolations that aren't actually going to help you as much compared to the main compounds, which give you really most of your gains. Because at the end of the day with lifting, it is 20% that gets you the most of your gains. So what I recommend here is you focus almost all of your time on lifting somewhere in the 5 to 10 rep range. If you want, you can go lower or higher. This isn't a very rigid thing, but 5 to 10 is a really good range. Even if you want, you could go 4 to 8, somewhere in that range, and just focus on the compounds. Bench, squat, deadlift, standing overhead press. It's great. Very great functional lift. Rows, weighted pull-ups, weighted dips. Those are the best movements. If you literally just spend all your time focusing on those lifts and blending in some sort of unilateral movements like single leg RDLs or single leg Bulgarian split squats, you will literally improve and get 95% of your gains. And if you want here and there, add an isolation if you have the time. But spend most of your time lifting, focusing on compound lifts. Now we have everything together. We have the lifting, we have the martial arts. But the final thing we have to figure out is how do we actually create a structured plan? And here's what I'm going to provide you, is that plan that you can actually follow. Now, obviously, we all work differently. So what works for me might not always work best for you. So feel free to adapt this and switch it according to your own personal preferences and your own time management abilities. So what I would do if I were just a typical person who does not have any actual aspirations of getting in the ring and fighting somebody, what I would recommend is a 2-day and 2-day split, or a 3-day split, or a 2 to 3, either 2 to 3 of each art. So fighting 2 to 3 days, lifting 2 to 3 days. But when you do that, it is focused and intense. You focus on the things that gave you the most bang for your buck. When you are in your combat sports, you want to focus as much in your classes. You want to drill as much. If someone's holding pads for you, try to ask them to throw a punch or two at you. Try to focus on defense. Focus on all the things that matter. Now, with lifting, again, focus on all the compound lifts, developing yourself as much as you can. And with all this that we have, I would recommend the best balance is an hour to an hour 30 minutes when you're fighting, which because typically classes are at least an hour long. And when you are lifting, I would recommend even 30 minutes minimum to a maximum of an hour. I don't think you need more of that, especially if you're just a typical person who just wants to improve your health, but also be able to fight, but with a nice physique. Now we have everything together. The only thing you really need to add on to this is just a little bit of recovery. The best thing I'd recommend is stretching and foam rolling. These are the best things you can do for yourself either before, after, or both in terms of your recovery and mixing that in with your training. So every single day that you train, blend that in. And that's really everything that I have for you. 2 to 3 days of lifting, 2 to 3 days of fighting, and recovery every single day, just 10 to 20 minutes foam rolling and stretching, and you have everything. You have a nice physique, you have a nice ability of actually able to fight somebody, but at the same time, you're able to recover. You have time, you're not burning yourself out. And this is what I personally find to be the best mix of fighting, lifting, and recovery. And this is what I recommend for the general public. Again, thank you all for watching this. If you did enjoy this video, feel free to subscribe, like, follow, and again, as always, share this with a friend who's possibly having these kinds of aspirations. And once again, stay blessed.